So the question is, how do we maintain our equilibrium, the depth of connection that we get, let's say, in meditation? How do we sustain this during the other 99.99% of our day? I think that's the question anyway. And that condition, of course, is referred to in the Bhagavad Gita as Sthita Prajna, somebody of steady wisdom. We know such a person exists when we see them working vigorously for the welfare of all beings and not being upset by anything. In other words, how do we, in the midst of all the fragments called problems and difficulties, how do we maintain a sense of the totality? And because we are suffering from what is technically called avidya, or ignorance, ignorance is really a forgetfulness of the fact. What is the fact? That our deepest nature is that. So how do we maintain that? Well, we're never far from it. We're always there. We're always connected with it, and it manifests itself in the very word I, because we don't say it for grammatical reasons and for complexity of construction of language, but when we say I, we really mean I exist. The difficulty is that we're continuously saying to ourselves, repeatedly, I exist as a body and I exist as a mind. And there we require some discernment which says that I am not just the body, not just the mind. I am the immortal. So these are the first words that stabilizes Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita when he is suffering from deep depression. In fact, we can even say nervous breakdown. Now I'm going to integrate a few things here because today is Ram Nam, and for some time on Saturday mornings we had gone through the story of Rama. And today we think of Rama, of course. Why is it necessary? Because we're recalling the events of great, great lives, more than lives, giant waves that come from age to age, from time to time, is one of the means of sustaining our attunement to the glory of the divine. And so stories, mythologies, poems, songs, recalling beautiful scenes, moments of inspiration, prayer, japa. These are all techniques of keeping the attention tuned into the glory of the divine self, otherwise called God. And so, of course, I think somebody here got a new translation of the Practicing the Presence, Brother Lawrence. Put very simply, it is this practicing the presence. Practicing the presence means feeling the divine presence all around, and not thinking that we'll only access it during times of meditation. In other words, our whole life is another kind of meditation, if you will, with eyes open, where we are in the midst of a great divine drama, and we have to have a conviction that behind everything, behind the fragments, is a totality. We don't crash through the fragments. We don't criticize the fragments. We accept all the so-called fragments with this one acknowledgement that what we call fragmented life, that involves time and space and a certain interpretation of it, all of that relies on a fundamental scriptural interpretation where we not only see but we feel the totality of existence behind everything, and we practice that. So when I first learned Vedanta philosophy, my teacher told me, says, see God in everything. Now I was with him for so many years. I first met him in 1968, and he attained his Mahasamadhi in 1991 at the age of 92 years of age. And his message never changed. And all I've done is adopt the same message, but it didn't come from him. We find it everywhere in all the scriptures. We find it constantly. Ishu Upanishad tells it, Bhagavad Gita tells it. In so many places in the Upanishads, we tell it repeatedly. And when something is repeated, we know it's significant and important. We have to learn to shift our way of looking at things. And meditation is a way of doing that, but of course we have to get peace of mind before we meditate. In order to meditate, we have to have self-control. We have to gain peace of mind. What do we mean by self-control? It means watching what surfaces in the mental field. Seeing whether it is very easily classified as negative or positive. What is negative? Negative will be taking seriously the world in front in such a way that we react to our detriment and the detriment of others. Anger is the easiest example of that. Anger, resentment, we have to be watchful, vigilant of what comes up in the mind. And where's it coming from? It's coming from the deep habit level. It's coming from the subconscious area. And so how do we cultivate that? In order to practice the divine presence, we have to cultivate the soil, if you like, where the roots are in the unconscious mind. Some say subconscious, assuming it's below or inferior. It's not inferior at all, but certainly it is below the conscious level. And in there we find all the things that we learnt, good or bad, all the behaviors that contribute toward our physical survival. It's not only in us, it's in every creature. And as time goes on, we learn more and more and more, but we orientate things more and more to the psychophysical until we arrive at human's gateway, the birth of a human, where we have the capacity to consciously change it. We cannot change the unconscious mind directly. We have to do it indirectly. We have to do it through the gateway of conscious mind and conscious experience. And that means all our discipline is watchfulness. Watch and pray is the wonderful, wonderful quotation even. Watch and pray. We learn to watch what is happening in the mental field. And then we learn to insert prayer in it. When we talk about prayer, we're not talking about the prayer that assumes a duality. Something separate from us that is a supplier, a storehouse of goods. God the storekeeper. That's not the kind of prayer we're talking about. The kind of prayer we're talking about is a plea that comes from a yearning heart that says, let me never lose you. Let me always think of you. Let me always be tuned into your glory. Because we are just as reliant as the flow of divine grace flowing towards us as the other way around. And how do we tap into that grace? Well, grace is something that makes us get what we want. It's not that we are working and making things like rituals in order to get the grace. And so you make the ritual, you make the prayer, you do a religious ceremony, and grace comes. No, grace comes first, and then the action, because the act of doing the ritual, the act of asking the question, the act of me responding, is all because there's a flow of divine grace. We can register it as energy, but we have to add divine energy, since there is no other energy except divine energy. Anger, is this a divine energy? Yes, it's an expression of the same energy, wrongly used. Used in such a way that we feel we have to defend ourselves. There's no such thing as righteous indignation. There's no such thing as righteous anger. Even when a parent disciplines a child, no anger should be there. It's simply a straightforward expression, even an expression of love, that I won't allow you to put your hand in the fire. Putting your hand in the fire is dangerous. Running out into traffic is dangerous. There are certain things you don't know, and I want to protect you, but you need some borders. And when children are brought up without borders, they become completely out of control. That's not helping them or assisting them. So we're disciplining our own mind, we're disciplining our own body, we're disciplining our children, we're disciplining other things, not with any sense of anger, not out of irritation or impatience, but we're disciplining it out of loving kindness. We're doing it out of a sense of joy. We're doing it out of a sense of a divine purpose, that ultimately all the mind will be cleaned completely. That means the subconscious mind or unconscious mind will completely be reformed and become habitually pure, habitually holy, habitually saintly, filled with divine grace, nothing else. Purely what we call sattva, full of purity, goodness, truth, harmony, peace. And so the medium in which you are floating in is God's grace. That means then that all your surroundings, all your environment, including the environment of the physical body, the environment of the mental field, the environment of the air, the planet Earth, is a remarkable thing. We don't think of it often, but we have an Earth that is situated there on the periphery, the suburbs of our galaxy, on one of the outer arms. You'd think that with the Milky Way turning around, we would be flung out into space. But we have something called inertia that keeps us going. And you may think, well, the whole Milky Way is vast, and we are just barely a spot in the whole thing. Our solar system is barely a blemish in the whole scheme of the Milky Way. But you see, it is a distilled version of the whole universe. It's a distilled version of God. And there is no separation. So what I may have said last night, I'll say again. There is no creator and creation separate. We have to get used to that idea. What we call God is not an extra cosmic, judging, criticizing entity. I think it was one famous atheist, Stephen Fry, and he was asked about, if you went and met God, what would you say? And he would say, I would ask him, why did you create cancer for children? Why did you make worms bore into a child's face? Why were you so cruel? Why did you make children suffer? So many things, you see. But then later in a subsequent interview, he said, of course, I know I feel very emotional about it. He said, how dare you, God? How dare you say that you are a loving God when all of this is going on? You see, now in a subsequent interview, he said, yes, I wasn't really angry and resentful. I was just caught off guard by a question because I don't believe in such a God. Well, nor do I, nor do we in Vedanta. We don't believe in a jealous and punishing God. What do we believe? That supreme entity that we call God in religion, that divine, infinite, invisible, is both the efficient and the material cause. These are terms that are used in Greek philosophy. So we have in Greek philosophy, we have Aristotelian philosophy, and Aristotle presents 4 kinds of causes. We'll deal with only 2. That is the efficient cause. In other words, a carpenter makes a stool from wood. Well, what is the cause of the wood? It is clearly the carpenter. Is God something like that, a potter forming a pot and a distance from it and then smashing it afterwards cruelly? No, because the second thing is that being is a material cause also. In other words, that being is both the efficient cause, the agency, and also the actual effect of a creation. What is God? We think we can separate him into creator and creation, but actually it's the one thing. It's a complete totality. So God exists within us in the shape of, we can say, the soul. And as God sees you and me and all other individuals as a worthy instrument where He can invest His grace. Let us see ourselves now, how that being is present here and now. And God finds me good. He finds you very good. Otherwise, He won't sustain you anymore. So, in the morning, get up. And I'm quoting again Joel Goldsmith as I did last night. Get up. Before you get up, though, review one thing. I and the Father are one in Christian language. Review this fact. The kingdom of heaven is within me. The whole totality is mine. I am that. I am the grand ocean of existence. I'm not the wave alone, and there's no difference between the wave and the ocean. And I am that, and everything I encounter is that. And there is no separation between me and the other person, be they interpreted as a difficult person or a friendly person. We make these categories. I don't like that person. Why? They don't like me. I don't like that person. Why? They make it very hard for me. Well, why not take it as a kind of discipline? Why not take this difficult fragment and learn how to handle it properly? Not make combat with it, not destroy it, but find a way around it. What is the way around it? It is only to see the divine within and to feel the divine within and to feel that there is no actual separation between the two. But that's not easy. No, I didn't say it was easy, but take it like a game. And in a game, you may succeed a few times, and you may fail a few times. So be it. But the more you try, the more you'll succeed. And the more you succeed, the more habitual it becomes, the easier it becomes. And so divine grace freely falls on the vehicle, which is, you can say, is the individual. Both at the conscious and the subconscious levels, both. And for God, of course, there are no levels at all. For that being, it's all one single sheet. Past, present, and future exists for me and you and everybody else, but not in the realm of the divine. It's all even. It's all a totality. Look past the fragments and find the totality. If I see as something different and become critical, that means I may want to be a corrector of people, a corrector of circumstances. But divine grace will supply the field which will occupy me all the time. In other words, you may find that bad people will surround me. And therefore, I must ask for these three things. I must ask for greatness, goodness, happiness, for all equally, so that no opposite field will be created to my wishes for, let us say, a house or a proper job or even a child or a partner or a companion or a good life or a pleasant life or a healthy life or goods, if you like, or objects, and so on, so forth, so many endless kinds of desires we have. Unfulfilled desires. If they were fulfilled, they wouldn't be desires, of course. See, when an airplane plunges through the air closes in behind it in the space vacated. Same thing with water. And if I plunge directly into God's grace, then this divine grace follows in behind. When there's discord, I shouldn't try to correct it. I shouldn't even try to criticize it. I should run to the divine, displace the grace, and grace follows into the area you left behind. And everybody has a divine spring from it. And so, instead of opposing what seems to be an opposition, we fill it with divine grace, tap into it, plunge into the divine grace. It's headlong. And we'll see how this grace fills up behind and fills the whole area, including an awkward person, and transforms them completely. It's not useful to do anything else. So you are not going to get grace, you are already in it. Like water, you're already in the environment. You're already in air. So just as water closes in behind a person diving into a swimming pool, you can dive forward and the waves close behind you. So it's not that you are ever separated from this divine. You're always within it. But the temptation is always there to see the object or person or place in front and to say, how will I handle it? How will I deal with it? How can I have this constant remembrance? And it is exactly that as a technique. Since we are suffering from forgetfulness, our technique is constant remembrance. It's called Abhyasa Yoga. Whenever the mind wanders off or goes in an awkward direction, a negative direction, it's our clue. Okay, let's put some positive in. Let's not allow ourselves to remain with the negative. You know, there's the old marriage counselor who says, you see, never go to bed angry with anybody in the household, be it children, be it wife, whatever it is. Never go to bed angry. Well, yes, but never leave the last second angry. Never leave the last second filled with doubt or fear. Put in confidence and faith, knowing that divine grace is always around you. And you can put it in a personalized form. Supposing you think that God is a mother, supposing you feel that deeply, supposing that's your psychological need also, then what will you do? You'll feel that this presence is there, literally there. When you walk, she walks with you. When you work, she works with you. When you invite people to your house, she's present as your first guest. Always present with you. If you think that God is a father, same thing. As you walk, he's holding your hand. He won't allow you to fall. Sometimes he's carrying you on his shoulders so that you're able to look out on the horizon. He's playful and so on. All of these characteristics are there in our highest reading of this absolute that we call God. So from the wisest prophets to the remotest past, to the remotest future, all wisdom is now present in this mind which is God's. You just tap the power. That grace is ready to come every instant, every moment of eternal time. And so there is a formula for serene living. Firstly, we should invoke divine grace in the right way. So fear is replaced by faith, not by fearing or fighting the darkness. Secondly, don't try to correct people, because that's an assumption that God made mistakes and we have to go and correct them. And you're putting them all right. Use wisdom, not foolishness. Thirdly, tune health, not disease. When divine will is invoked, health and wisdom will always be yours. Sickness cannot come. And four, you need to cultivate an awareness of your life for the divine. Fear is faith in the adversary and doubt in God or in my confidence that God protects me. Now you see, from the wisest prophets to the remotest past, all wisdom is now present in the mind. And that means then that we can all reach the highest, either immediately or progressively. How can we do it immediately? Well, Ramakrishna gave this example. If a cave is dark for 1,000 years, how long does it take to light it? You strike a match and it's an instant. That being with you all the time, being in you, being around you, being the only existence that ever exists in a permanent way, we'll never lose it. We have access to it immediately. It's as if God is sitting there waiting. And as long as we are entertained with other things, that was Ramakrishna's example as well. When the child is busy playing with the toys, then the mother leaves it to play and gets on with the laundry or some other task. But when the child hurts itself or gets fed up or bored or what have you and looks for attention and starts crying, the mother runs straight away. So we can see that the divine is sitting, waiting, as it were. Come on, my child. I'm waiting for you to turn to me constantly, to be with me constantly. This tuning in the mind, tuning in our attention. How many times should we tune in to the broadcast, whichever country there is, whether it's BBC or RTE or some other broadcasting station? We tune it carefully. At some point or other, it may go off. Then howling noises will come and we retune it back. Every time we notice it going out of tune, we tune it back. We tune it back. Now you see, I'm going to mention today's story of Rama because today is Ram Navami. And we get this story of Rama, if you remember, from Valmiki. Valmiki wasn't a perfect man. We call him a rishi, but you see, he didn't come from any distinguished lineage. He wasn't born as a Brahmin or any person of a high status. No, he was a common robber. And if a common robber can be transformed into one of the greatest sages in Indian history, because the story of Rama is an epic, a historical epic, then there's every chance for all of us. But we have to take the opportunity where we find it. What was the opportunity for him? Well, we can see that Narada Maharshi, who tends to wander here and there, he was going through the forest where Valmiki was there, waiting for him, and everybody else who passed. His occupation was a robber. And he wanted to plunder this great sage, and of course the sage reprimanded him. Stop. This way is not a good way. It's not a very moral or ethical way. Why are you doing all this? And the robber then defends himself. He says, no. He says, you see, I have a family. How else will I maintain them? I'm not a skilled person. And money has to be earned. I think by foul means, if fair means, can't succeed because I'm desperate. How else will my family be fed and looked after? Well, of course, we know that robbery and murder, even for robbery's sake, are great sins. And these sins should be shared by the recipients, in other words, by his family also. So Narada says, well, I'm going to stay here. I won't leave, but I warn you that the sin should be shared by the relatives. And so the man went home to verify the statement. Anyway, when he posed this to his family, he was surprised to hear his people say that they had a claim on his earnings, but they had nothing to do with his sin. In fact, it was a surprise to them, I suppose, to know how he earned the livelihood. They never questioned it. This hard fact in human life then gave him a rude shock. And so it opened his eyes. Now you see what happens is when we get a rude shock in life, we have this alternative. Our eyes can be open and we change our formula. Or we can simply ignore it and carry on, burying our head in the sand, not learning any lesson from it and continuing and deepening the problem. So he goes back to Narada and he says, well, you're right. They won't share in the sin. And so please show me a way. And the celestial sage takes pity on the plunderer, makes him repeat the syllable, sacred syllable. Now he is instructed to say Rama. But of course, this rustic man, he could only say it as Mara. Now Mara, those who study Buddhism will know, The Buddha sat under the bo tree and he was tempted by Mara, the evil tempter. Is there a real person going in and doing that? No, when we sit down, all the unconscious negatives come up. And so our so-called habitual life will surface. And in this habitual life, we would think that, well, see, robbing, fulfilling my desires, protecting on the basis of fear and doubt and it all comes to the surface. Cannot help it. But by repeating Mara, 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 of course, it ultimately becomes Rama, Rama in the long run. And this transforms his mind because Rama is the very opposite of Mara. That represents all that is negative and evil. But Rama, on the other hand, represents everything that is good and splendid and perfect. And so this transforms his whole mind and he takes to holy living. Now, in the context of the question, japa, when we lovingly repeat the divine name constantly, 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 when I say this, some people misunderstand. They say, well, I can't stop work and do this. There are some things I have to concentrate on, and how can I continually do japa? How can I continuously repeat my mantra? Mantra, my sacred syllable that represents every single aspect of my divine chosen ideal. And so it becomes a protecting thought for me, and therefore I should repeat it. But how is it possible to do it all the time? Now, of course, you have this wonderful book, The Way of the Pilgrim, The Pilgrim's Way. A Russian pilgrim asked the same question. Pray without ceasing, says St. Paul. And he wonders, how can it possibly happen? What does it mean? It's impossible. And yet, you see, the meaning of the mantra, in his case, it is the mantra of the Orthodox Church, Lord have mercy, Lord Jesus Christ, have mercy on me. Repeatedly, repeatedly, these are just words. They have no meaning until you get into them, until you make friends with the mantra and understand its deep meaning. And so, in a sense, the mantra will reveal itself to you. And so, that has the capacity to transform the mind. Now, what to do? Well, you could repeat the mantra before an activity and after the activity, and you can add certain words and phrases of thanks. And at the end of a whole day, you can take out a diary or you take out a piece of paper that you keep and write there thankfulness. What did you experience in your day that you felt a sense of gratitude for? Learn to count your blessings and write them down. Why write them down? Because that gives a physical endorsement of it. It underlines it, not just the importance of it, but the significance of it. Until finally your mind is fill up with all the positives. Now, positives means those things which are full of totality, glory, beauty, goodness, harmony, and love. All of those things which make God lovable, make the divine closer to you. And so this is a way that's repeating the mantra. So the novice, he gets so deeply absorbed in this utterance of this mantra that he rises above body consciousness and he derives immense bliss in tuning himself to it. And he sits in meditation of that sound reality and he becomes introverted to that extent. So that in the course of time, he develops this name Valmiki because an anthill grows over him and covers his body. And in a trance, he's not aware of any of this. I'm not suggesting that you do that. But what I'm suggesting is that the story doesn't end there because he then becomes a Maharshi. He doesn't disappear into the depths of Samadhi. Now he then we see his presence there. We see it in the Ramayana in the story, we see it as an advisor, we see him as a great, great sage. We see his history there in the Bhagavatam. We see how important a sage is. And we know that a person of depraved character even can be transformed into a great saint, all by divine grace. And what is the key to this transformation was this repetition of a mantra. In the beginning, he doesn't understand the meaning of this mantra. It comes out as Mara, 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 but ultimately it comes out as Rama, 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 the opposite of what is evil, everything that is noble, everything that is good. So inspired is he that he comes out with the story of Rama, the insight of that story. He's witnessing a pair of doves mating in the spring mating season, and an archer shoots one, and the partner grieves, and it is this heartfelt grieving that stimulates an emotional feeling in Valmiki, and out comes the insightful story of Rama. A beautiful, beautiful background to it, and of course the Ramayana, of course, is a beautiful, beautiful epic. We studied it for a long time, maybe over a year, year and a half, here every Saturday. So what should we do? How should we keep our mind attuned? We should use 1,000 tools that we have available to us. We should see the beautiful sights and sounds in front of us and appreciate them deeply and register them to the divine, and see the divine in a flower, see the divine in the sky, see the divine in the sun. Don't pause until we get that feeling. And then when we sit for meditation, we don't proceed until we feel the presence, the divine presence there. And all meditation really is guided meditation, taking the attention on an inward journey with beautiful poetic expressions that heighten our sense of the aesthetics until we come to the final aesthetic moment, which is the blissful, joyful glory of the divine, our own divine nature. Now, whenever we have a difficulty in front of us, this is good news for us. Why? Because it is the challenging. Do you recognize me dressed up in this form? Do you recognize me dressed up in the leper for Jesus? Jesus would have recognized, oh Lord, you are dressed up. You are looking like a leper. I know you are full and free and perfect. You don't have a blemish on you. Immediately, with that thought, the leprosy finishes. It gets cured. The lame man walks, the blind man sees, the dead man wakes. And in Ramakrishna's case, the whole country wakes up. After 50 years, the shackles break. So this is the power of thought, continuous thinking, that leaves us in a mode of sthita prajna, steady wisdom, and it requires constant attention with no holiday for it. Religious practice, spiritual discipline, has no holiday in it. It is a continuous practice from moment to moment, with the divine grace supplying us with a media called time. Not in God's area, but in our area. Here is a series of opportunities. Catch it, put something useful in it, elevate the mind constantly, find every opportunity to do it. And when somebody tries to drag your mind down, listen sympathetically, but secretly think, oh no, Lord, you are here, full and free and perfect. There's nothing to change, nothing to criticize. All is well. The most positive outlook. And of course, what we are seeing is this wonderful, wonderful philosophical understanding. It is a matching philosophical understanding to the discoveries of modern science that says, whatever you see is variations of atomic activity in the form of waves and oscillations, excitations in Hilbert space, the excitation of the electron, the corresponding excitation of the proton's affinity with another proton, causing attraction and therefore gravity. Responding to that with a wish to keep things undivided if possible, with the electrical energy resisting and keeping things small and yet infinite. This is the divine play. And sooner or later, we will have to catch it and apply one of our greatest tools, a certain sense of humor, a certain sense of fun, seeing that there's a joyfulness everywhere. There's an advertisement that I recently saw. You know, if you look for something on the internet, on the YouTube, for example, something that is a talk, you may get an advert. There's a woman there who lost whose car breaks down and she laughs. Then her keys drop in the mud and she laughs. And then her hand goes in, she laughs. And as she's doing that, the car door is open and a car comes in and swipes the door off and she laughs. Now, I don't know, I haven't explored this, what they're advertising or anything, but I thought, what a wonderful thing. This person is a great saint. They have an outlook on life which says, I see the humor in every situation because I cannot change it. And what I see really is a funny thing, because if I reproduced it as a comedy, not only I would chuckle at it, but everybody would chuckle at it. So we take life in a serious way that puts us out of tune. Let us see the glory of the divine everywhere, equally everywhere. Let us revel in its joyous presence. And in this way we sustain the foundation of the meditation. But meditation really, in a sense, is not really the foundation of it. Foundation of it is having that steadiness in our daily life. With that in mind, we can now meditate easily. So there's a circularity about it. If I have self-control with peace of mind, I'm able to meditate easily. With that meditation, it forms a kind of secure battery for the day, and then it sustains my outlook on life until I come around to meditate again, and so goes on. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Purity, persistence, patience, these are the three components. Well, if there's nothing more, we wish you a good evening. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Good, thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji.